Welcome to your History Night Before News for your Paper 2 exam, which is looking at health in the people and Elizabethan England. So this exam, like you've done before, is going to be 2 hours. This time you're going to have the 2 exam papers on your desk, one that says health in the people and the one that says Elizabethan England. Same as paper 1, you get to do an hour on each paper and you decide which one you complete first. This will be 50% of your final GCSE grade and it's 25% of your final GCSE for each of the papers. You again need to make sure that you do the paper you are strongest on first to maximise your time, and keep an eye on the clock so that you know when the time is up. So for the first paper, which will be health and the people, you've got 1 hour, 4 questions. One question will be source based and the other will be an extended 16-mark answer. So for question 1 on your health paper, it will be written like this: study source A. How useful is source A to a historian studying whatever it might be? Now, we recommend you spend 10 minutes on this question. 10 minutes, 8 marks, 2 paragraphs. There are 3 key elements we need to see in this question. We need to see you writing about the content of the source, we need to see you adding in your own knowledge, and we need to see you writing about the provenance of the source. So the provenance is who wrote it, where it came from, and why it was produced. So if we look at this, there are 3 key elements, because this exam question is testing you on your AO3, your ability to analyse, evaluate and use sources. But they also want you to make a substantiated judgment. So that means you saying it is very useful, it is partially useful. So really, when you answer this question, when you look back over what you've written, make sure that there are 4 key things that go into this answer: judgment, context, provenance and content. So when you are given the source, it will look something like this. It's usually a visual source and it will say, for example, like this: how useful is source A to a historian studying medieval medicine? Explain your answer using source A and your contextual knowledge. They will have the picture or the extract or whatever it might be, and next to it they will always have some additional information. The additional information that you can see on the side in the blue box, that is your provenance. So that's where you go to get the information for that. So the first thing you need to do is just be really clear about what it is you are looking at. So in this case, I've got to make a judgment on how useful medieval medicine. This source is when I'm looking at medieval medicine. So I've worked out I'm going to be using phrases like this is very useful, this is partially useful, this is not useful. Medieval medicine means I need to make sure I've got my dates, so I'm looking at around 1000 to 1500 in terms of timing. Explain means I'm going to have 2 paragraphs and I'm going to be using words like this is important because, or this was useful, this shows me that. In contextual knowledge means I'm going to have to bring in some of the facts of my own. What do I know about medieval medicine that I can link to the source? So the first thing you would really need to do, and please do this in the mock, is annotate the source. Write on it, circle on it, pick out the key features you can see. So for example, I can circle here that I can see nuns treating people. Therefore, that suggests to me that it was the church that took care of people when they were sick. I can also see a cross in the middle of this picture. I can see what appears to be some sort of surgeon looking at somebody's sample. Again, that tells me that that could have been a form of medicine, that people would look at urine samples. I can see that it looks reasonably clean in there, which tells me that this was very much a clean environment that people were treated in. It's not very overcrowded, very few people are there. And at the front of the picture, I can see what looks like a king who is praying, and I know that praying was a form of treatment. So if we look now at the provenance, it's around 1500. It was from a hotel due, which again, hotel meaning hospitality. Remember, hospitals were not the way that they were now. They were more about getting rest and having that break. And it says here, a hospital run by the Catholic Church. So I'm going to pick up on the fact that the church heavily controlled medieval medicine, following the theories of Galen. So here, literally annotate your picture, make a list of all the things that you know about it, and then when you bring it all together, we need to see those 3 elements. Is it useful because of its content, useful because of what you know, useful because of its provenance? Your second question on the medicine paper, again, is an 8 marker, so that's 10 minutes, 2 paragraphs. And this one, we're going to ask you to explain the significance of something or someone. Now for this one, your 2 paragraphs, your first paragraph should be the short-term significance, the second paragraph should be your long-term significance. So what was the impact at the time? What was the impact after the event? Even now, what is the impact of that personal discovery? So in terms of what we mean by significance, it's looking at the importance assigned to a person, group, discovery or development or event at the time and important over time. So we're really thinking about the impact here. This person had a positive impact at the time. This person had a negative impact at the time, but in the long term, it became positive. So you are looking at how time and how something has been viewed has changed. So if you remember, you will have seen these questions in class. There are some key questions here, short-term significant questions and long-term significant questions. We recommend that you take 2 of these questions and you develop these in your paragraph. So your paragraph 1 should focus in on the short-term significance. So why was it new at the time? What did people think about it at the time? Who did it affect? Did different groups get affected? Did it result in important change? So focusing on those questions in paragraph 1 about the person or the event that you're looking at. Paragraph 2, we're focusing on long-term significance. So did it have a long-lasting impact over time? Do we remember it today? If so, why? How has it become more or less significant? Has our interpretation of the event changed? And do we attach different importance to the event now? So really think about those questions as you are answering your paragraphs. So we really need, question 3 is explain 2 ways in which something was similar or different. This one again is 8 marks, 2 paragraphs, starting your paragraphs, 1 way in which, a second way in which. Make sure that you really do focus in on what the question's asking you. So they're going to pick 2 different things from history. They're going to ask you how are they the same and how are they different. So really do make sure that you highlight the question to be aware of whether you're looking for similarities or difference. Very often with this question, they are looking at causes and consequences. They are looking at, were the causes of the event the same? Were the consequences of the event the same? So do consider the factors of cause and consequence with this question. So for example, you might get asked this, explain 2 ways in which the Black Death in the Middle Ages and the cholera epidemics in the 19th century were similar. So the first thing you need to do is work out which 2 time periods you're being asked to compare. So in this case, you're being asked to compare the Black Death, which is the medieval period or the Middle Ages. And in this case, it's cholera. So it says 19th century. So I know that's the 1800s. So I'm looking at the industrial period or the Victorians. So be really clear about which 2 time periods or 2 people and which time periods those people come from if for this first part of this question. Then I would suggest you just literally make a list of all the ways that you can think of that they are similar. So for example, they didn't know about germs, they both killed large numbers of people, the disease spread quickly, they led to changes in people's lives, and then I've put here some of the changes that resulted of this. What I can then do is I can start to think, okay, how am I going to structure my paragraphs? So I'm going to talk about the causes in my paragraph 1, that they both didn't know about germs, that the disease spread quickly, and then in my second paragraph I can start to write about how the event changed people's lives and the consequences of that. So make that list, go through that list and see if you can identify what were the causes of the event or the discovery, how did it develop and what results did it have. And if you can think of that for this question, you'll be moving into those higher bandings. Key phrases to include for this question: this led to, as a result, consequently, this contributed, this influenced, this meant that. Really good phrases to get into your answer for this particular question. And then finally, we move on to question 4 on the medicine paper. This one is how far has, they will give you a factor, been the main factor in a particular theme. So this is the question that is going to be worth 16 marks. Please make sure you spend the most time on this. We recommend about 25 to 30 minutes of your exam. It is absolutely essential you answer this. Try and pick up as many marks as you possibly can. Now you will need to write about the factor in the question. That is absolutely given. You must make sure you cover that, and then you can write about 1 or 2 other factors depending on how quickly you can write and how much you feel that you can get into the answer. It is better to do 1 other factor really well than try and do 2 and it be rushed. We 100% need a conclusion to this question, and we need you to keep using the wording of the question. So in terms of the factors that they could ask you about, they could ask you, has war been the main factor? Has religion been the main factor? Has luck been the main factor? Government, communication, science and technology, and the role of the individual. It's really important that you know those factors. So your teacher should have given you a chart which shows you the different factors over the different time periods, so make sure you revise that for the exam. The themes they might choose to ask about are people's knowledge and understanding of disease, the treatment of disease, surgery, prevention, hospitals and healthcare, and public health. So, for example, here, has the role of the individual been the main factor in the development of surgery in Britain since the medieval times? So I know that I need to write about the role of the individuals. I know that my theme here is surgery, and that's what I need to focus in on. I don't start writing about hospitals. I don't start writing about the theory of the four humours or anything like that, because it's not surgery related. So be really clear on what your factor is and what your theme is. Once you've worked those two things out, what you can then do is you can start thinking about which time periods you can cover. Ideally, we want 3 time periods. For the 16 marker, to really maximise your marks, we are looking for words like without, as well as, finally, more importantly, however, although, this led to, as a result, significantly. Those key phrases show that you're making judgment and you are building an argument. So please make sure you invest some time in that 16 marker on the medicine paper. Your Elizabethan England paper from 1568 to 1603 will be an hour. In the real exam, you will have 4 questions. You will just have 3 in this mock that you are sitting in March. That's because we won't have covered the 16 mark content in this in class yet. And in the summer, we know already that that's going to focus on your historic environment of Hardwick Hall. So the first question you're going to have on your Elizabeth paper will ask you, how convincing is interpretation A about something? So again, we're seeing that that's 8 marks, 10 minutes, 2 paragraphs. One way A is convincing, a second way is a good way to show the examiner that you've covered the key points. So what we're looking at here is we are going to be given somebody's point of view about something, and you're going to pick out those points of view and say what you know about it and how convincing you think it is. Remember, the word convincing means believable. So do you think you do believe what they're saying? Do you think you don't believe what they're saying? Based on your own knowledge. So for example, you're going to get an extract like this. This one here is about the Earl of Essex. It's an adaptation from an article by Richard Cavendish in History Today in 2001. So the first thing you're going to do is you're just going to have a look at where it comes from, what the theme is, and then you can start to pick out some of the key points. So as you read through the interpretation, what you might want to do is then start highlighting some of the key areas. So for example, the first point says, Essex soon charmed the elderly Queen when he arrived at England's court in his early 20s. He was tall, handsome, generous and arrogant. Now we know that Elizabeth did favour him. He did flatter the Queen. So from your own knowledge, that could be a point that you write about. Another point there, he failed in Ireland, and which he blamed on enemies at court. We know that he did have issues in Ireland, so I might bring in some of my own knowledge and write about that. He tried to seize the Queen and take control of government. We know that Essex did have a rebellion, and I could talk about that. So what we want to see in this answer is you literally selecting 2 or 3 key points from this interpretation that you can then start to bring in from your own knowledge. So if you wanted to, a very basic form, if you get really stuck, is highlight a couple of areas you think, okay, I could talk about that. A is convincing when it says, put in a quote, from my own knowledge, I know that, and back it up. A is also convincing as it states, pick a quote, I know that. So what we do want to see you do in this question is we want to see you putting in a quote, and then we want to see you backing it up with your own evidence. Question 2 is an explain. You've had this before on your cold ball paper and obviously on your medicine paper. So explain one way in which this was important because a second way this was important. Again, 8 marks, 10 to 12 minutes on this question. We need to see you using the word because. Again, you do that twice. So write an account Again, a very similar question. Very often I've put there think, explain. Very often with the write an account, you can just cross out write an account and put the words explain. They are the same type of question. Again, 8 marks, 2 paragraphs, 10 to 12 minutes, and we are using that word because. Ideally, when you are writing an account, though, the difference we need to see is that you are making sure that the events are in chronological order and you cover them in the right order. If it helps you to, do cross out the words write an account and put the word explain. And again, your structure for this one way in which this was important because, a second way, this was important because. So make sure you read the questions really, really carefully. Please write something, even if you just describe the source or you say what the person is saying in the interpretations, you could get a mark. Write about the factor in that 16 marker because you may well get some marks. Please don't give up. Please don't leave blank answers unless you absolutely run out of time, which you shouldn't do in this case. Keep linking back to the questions. Use the wording of the question in your answer. Make sure you can, where possible, use keywords, key terms, key dates, key people and facts. Put in as much knowledge as you know, but do watch that timing. We wish you lots and lots of luck in this exam. This is a really good opportunity for us to see how you've progressed since mock 1, and lots of luck.